In the quiet, misty town of Raniket, nestled among tall pine trees, lived two children, Arav and Mira. They were not just neighbors, they were the best of friends. Their world was small, filled with simple joys. They would chase butterflies in meadows filled with wildflowers. They would share stories under the shade of a very old oak tree. This tree was their special place. As they grew older, their childhood friendship slowly blossomed into a deep and unspoken love. It was a love as pure and gentle as the mountain breeze. They did not need many words to understand each other. A simple glance, a quiet smile, it was enough for them. Their hearts were connected in a way that only they could understand. The years passed like seasons in the hills. Arav became a young man with dreams in his eyes. He wanted to be a writer. He wanted to tell stories that would touch people's hearts. Mira, with her kind heart and gentle soul, was his biggest supporter. She believed in his dreams more than anyone else. The day came when Arav had to leave Raniket. He had gotten a chance to study in a big college in Delhi. It was a difficult farewell. The world felt big and scary without Mira by his side. They stood under their favorite oak tree, the same one that had watched them grow up. The air was heavy with unspoken emotions and the sadness of parting. Before he left, Arav made a promise to Mira. He looked into her eyes and said, "I will write to you every week, Mira. I will never miss a single one. And my first book, it will be our story, the story of our love." Mira's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. She knew his promise was sincere. She handed him a small gift, a beautiful leather-bound journal. "Write our story in this," she said softly. "Fill these empty pages with our memories, our dreams, and our love. This will keep us together, no matter how far apart we are." The journal was more than just a gift. It was a piece of her heart that he would carry with him. Arav held the journal close to his heart. It felt like holding Mira's hand. He promised to fill it with their story, a story that began in the quiet lanes of Raniket and would now travel to the bustling city of Delhi. He promised that their love would be the ink that filled every page. As the bus to Delhi started to move, he saw Mira standing under the oak tree, waving until he was out of sight. That image was etched in his mind. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would be written with hope, longing, and an unbreakable promise. Their love story was no longer just theirs. It was a story waiting to be told to the world. True to his word, Arav began to write. Every week a letter would arrive for Mira from Delhi. Each letter was a window into his new life, but it was also a bridge back to her. He wrote about the crowded streets, the fast-paced life, and the many new faces he met. But mostly, he wrote about how much he missed her and the peaceful hills of Raniket. He described how the city noise could never replace the sound of the wind rustling through the pine trees. Mira would wait eagerly for the postman every week. She would read his letters under their oak tree, and it felt as if Arav was sitting right there beside her, sharing his day. His words kept their connection alive and strong. Mira's replies were just as heartfelt. She wrote about the small happenings in Raniket, the first snowfall of winter, the blooming of rhododendrons in spring, and the simple news of their small town. Her letters were filled with encouragement and love. They were his anchor in the overwhelming city. While he was busy with his studies, Arav also started writing their story in the journal Mira had given him. He poured his heart onto its pages, reliving every memory they had shared. He wrote about their childhood games, their long walks, and the quiet moments under the oak tree. The journal was becoming a beautiful testament to their love. For 2 years, the letters were a constant rhythm in their lives. They were a lifeline that defied the distance. But one week, the letter did not arrive. Mira waited, her heart filled with a strange anxiety. Another week passed and still there was no word from Arav. She told herself that he must be busy with his exams. She tried to calm her worried heart, but a sense of unease grew with each passing day. The silence was heavy and unfamiliar. It was a silence that frightened her. She sent him several letters, but there was no reply. The weekly ritual that had brought them so much comfort had suddenly stopped, leaving a void in its place. Then, one day, a different kind of letter arrived. It was not from Arav. It was a formal, impersonal envelope from a hospital in Delhi. Mira's hands trembled as she opened it. The words on the paper were cold and clinical. They spoke of a terrible road accident. Arav was in a coma. The world around Mira seemed to stop. The letter fell from her hands and she sank to the ground, her heart shattered into a million pieces. The promise, the letters, the dreams they had built together, everything seemed to be fading away. In that moment of profound shock and grief, she knew what she had to do. She had to go to him. Mira packed a small bag and took the first bus to Delhi. The journey was a blur of tears and prayers. When she reached the hospital, the stark white walls and the smell of antiseptic filled her with dread. Seeing Arav lying still and silent in the hospital bed was the hardest thing she had ever had to do. He looked so pale, connected to machines that beeped in a steady, monotonous rhythm. The doctors were not very hopeful. They said he was in a deep coma, and they did not know if he would ever wake up. But Mira refused to lose hope. She held his hand and whispered, "I am here, Arav. I will not leave you." In Arav's small apartment, Mira found the leather-bound journal. It was almost full. He had finished their story just as he had promised. The last entry was dated the day before his accident. It was a letter to her, filled with love and hope for their future together. He wrote about how he couldn't wait to come back to Raniket and read the whole story to her under their oak tree. Reading his words, Mira felt a fresh wave of grief, but also a surge of determination. She decided she would not let their story end this way. She would be his voice until he found his own again. Every single day, Mira would sit by Arav's bedside. She would talk to him for hours, telling him about her day and about the little things happening back home in Raniket. And every day, she would read to him from the journal. She read their story aloud, her voice soft but steady. She read about their childhood adventures, their secret promises, and their dreams for the future. She poured all her love and hope into every word, praying that her voice would somehow reach him in the darkness. The nurses would watch her with a mix of pity and admiration. For them, she was a symbol of unwavering devotion. Months passed. The seasons changed outside the hospital window, but inside time stood still. There was no change in Arav's condition. Mira's hope began to wear thin, but it never broke. One afternoon, as she was reading a chapter about their favorite memory under the oak tree, she felt a faint pressure on her hand. She stopped reading and looked down. Arav's fingers had twitched. Her heart leaped. She called his name, her voice trembling with emotion. Slowly, very slowly, his eyes fluttered open. The first thing he saw was Mira's face, tear-streaked but smiling. The first word he whispered was her name. Love had brought him back. Arav's recovery was slow but steady. Mira's presence was his greatest medicine. With her by his side, he gradually regained his strength. Once he was well enough, they returned to Raniket. The town welcomed them with open arms. Back in the familiar comfort of the hills, Arav, with Mira's help, edited the manuscript he had written in the journal. He sent it to a publisher, not with great expectations, but as a fulfillment of his promise to Mira. To their surprise, the publisher loved it. The book, titled The Oak Tree's Promise, was published a year later. It was a simple, honest story of love, hope, and the power of a promise. The book became an unexpected success. It touched the hearts of readers across the country. People wrote letters to Arav, sharing how his story had given them hope in their own lives. It became a symbol of love that could withstand distance, time, and even tragedy. Arav and Mira's love story, born in a small, quiet town, was now inspiring countless others. They married and lived a happy, peaceful life in Raniket. They built a small house near their beloved oak tree. Their love remained as strong and deep as it had always been, a quiet and beautiful melody in the heart of the mountains. Years went by, filled with love and companionship, but time, like a river, flows in only one direction. Mira, after a long and happy life, passed away peacefully in her sleep. Arav's heart was broken, but he was not alone. He had their memories, their story, and their eternal love. He continued to write, but he also kept his very first promise. Every week he would write a letter to Mira. He would walk to their oak tree, read the letter aloud, and then place it in a small wooden box he kept in a hollow of the tree. It was his way of keeping their conversation going, of telling her that he still missed her every single day. Araf lived a long life. After he passed, the people of Raniket found the box of letters in the old oak tree. They read the beautiful words of a love that had never died. The story of Arav and Mira became a local legend. The oak tree became a special place for lovers, a symbol of eternal devotion. Young couples would visit the tree, hoping to find a love as pure and enduring as theirs. The tree stood tall, its branches reaching for the sky, whispering the story of Arav and Mira to the wind, a timeless tale of a promise kept and a love that echoed through eternity.